Hi everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'll be showing you 5 cards that I created with the new Not Too Shabby Summertime Buddies stamp set. So I knew I was going to create 5 cards, so I stamped each image from the stamp set 5 times. If you want, you can plan your cards out ahead of time. I sometimes do that, but in this case I did not. I just kind of wanted to color. So instead of stressing out about how many things I should color, I just decided to color each image 5 times. So I will have a bunch of die cuts to work with. I like to do this for many reasons. The main reason is because this just saves me time. I can do all my coloring ahead of time. You can see that I'm coloring the animals in different colors just for some different options to choose from. Another reason I like to stamp color and fussy cut all my images beforehand is because I will have a lot of the images to work with. Yes, I'm going to have some leftovers, but that's usually okay with me because whenever I don't use a fussy cut image or a stamped image, I will most likely use it on a scrapbook layout. And I just enjoy having a lot of images to work with, and I tend to actually use more stamped images on a card when I already have them colored and fussy cut and they're available for me, than as opposed to like stopping to stamp, color, and die cut, if that makes sense. I hope it does, but this is just how I prefer to make multiple cards with one stamp set. I also do this with my kits most of the time. But yeah, I am using Copic markers. I did stamp everything out with my Memento Tuxedo black ink. And for this sand, I'm going to add some texture to it by doing a stippling technique. You can see I'm just adding tiny dots with my markers. I first colored it as I normally would, from darkest to lightest, and then I went over with each marker again, adding those dots. And I made sure to overlap the dots so that they would blend and they wouldn't look like polka dots, but more like texture. So I'm really happy with how those sandcastles turned out. You can see off camera I colored 4 of the 5 images, and I'm just going to show you how I colored each image from the stamp set once. And a lot of people like to color in cake using that stippling technique. I think that looks really cool. But for the rest of my images, I'm just coloring them smooth. I always start with my darkest marker, map out my shadow areas, go over that with my mid-tone, and then I leave a little bit of white space so that I can go over that with my lightest marker. For these starfish, I'm placing the darkest color towards the center, and then my lightest marker on the outer edges. So for most of the images, the larger ones, I used 3 markers, but for the small ones, I used 2. So I'm going to color this little puppy in sort of as a golden retriever. So I chose some light brown markers, and I did another technique here. I felt like the dog looked too brown, and I wanted to add a little bit of yellow. So I'm taking a Y11 marker, and I'm just going to go over the entire image, or the fur. And it's just going to add some warmth to the fur, make it a little bit more yellow. And this is called glazing. So you can pretty much go over any color. And since Copics are transparent, it will change the color slightly, but the color underneath it will still be more prevalent. So I think this is my last image, this little lemonade cup, which I think is super cute. I love this stamp set. All the stamp sets from the new Not Too Shabby release were a lot of fun to work with. And this one I just had so many ideas. I know spring has just begun, but I've made so many Easter cards and I'm starting Mother's Day, so I just wanted something different to do. So I will have these available for summertime. So I'm getting a head start here. So here you can see everything colored in. I'm just going to off camera fussy cut all of those out, and then I can start on card 1. So I'm taking a circle die from my stash, and I'm going to die cut it from this Nina panel, which I cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I did die cut that circle towards the top of the panel. I'm also going to die cut some palm trees using this lawn fawn die in my stash. All of the supplies that I used will be listed down below, and most of these items can be purchased at the Not Too Shabby shop. So I'm going to die cut the tree trunks and the coconuts from some brown cardstock, and then the palm leaves I will die cut from some green cardstock. Alright, so I'm just going to remove everything from the dies, and then I'm going to do some ink blending on that circle that I die cut out. I will be inlaying it back into that panel there. So I wanted to create a beach scene, so I'm going to take a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to lay it over halfway up my circle. I'm going to have half the circle be my ocean and then the other half my sky. For the ocean portion, I'm blending on some Salty Ocean Distress ink using a Picket Fence Studios blender brush. So I'm going to flip my scrap piece of paper over, lay that over my ocean, and then I can work on my sky. So I'm going to blend on some Squeeze Lemonade ink. And then around the edges of the sky, I'm going to blend some Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink. I didn't have that color in the regular Distress inks, so oftentimes I like to mix the two together. And they blend very nicely. The only thing is if you add water, the Distress Oxides will turn more chalky. So I don't typically add water when I'm working with both of the inks together. Here I'm adding my ink blended circle back into that white window panel. I'm just going to lay out my scene. I think I want those palm trees towards the right and then my little kitty cat on the left. I'm going to stamp my sentiment in that sky portion using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I'm going to glue down my palm trees. I'm going to add a little bit of art glitter glue to the bottom of their trunks, and then I'll just attach them to the bottom portion of that circle die cut window. I flipped that panel over, and now I'm going to add some acetate behind that circle window. If you know me, you know that I love to add acetate to my cards. So I'm going to add glue around the circle as well as behind those palm trees just for some extra security. Okay, and then I can glue down my cat. I'm just going to attach her with some art glitter glue. And then I'm also going to adhere those starfish below the palm trees with some art glitter glue. I'm going to take my ink blended circle and adhere that towards the top of a card base that I created with some 110-pound white Neenah cardstock. I'm attaching that down with my ATG tape. And then I'm going to add my white window panel on top. Surprisingly, I did not add foam tape behind this. I decided to leave this card pretty flat. To finish the card off, I'm just going to add some Trinity Stamps embellishments here. They're semi-transparent, so they kind of take on the color that's beneath them. And I think this just finished the card off really nicely. So I'm kind of showing you each card from simplest to more complex. So this was probably the easiest and fastest card to create using this stamp set. I'm going to go over the kitty cat with my Wink of Stella pen just to add a little bit of glimmer, and I'm going to go over her eyes with a white gel pen just because I did color them in with that gray marker I used to color the cat. So there's a close-up of card 1. For card 2, I'm going to do some more ink blending. I'm taking my Broken China Distress ink and a Picket Fence blending brush here, and I'm going to add this ink to this die cut square. This square is a Elizabeth Craft die. And then I'm also going to blend on some Salty Ocean Distress ink just to create an ombre. And I believe I'm blending on some Bristol cardstock. which is really nice for ink blending, but you can easily see fingerprints, so I am using a scrap piece of paper to hold down my blended panel. I'm going to go over the Salty Ocean Distress ink with my Broken China again, just to get a more seamless blend. I like how that looks. I'm going to add some water splatters with my Distress sprayer, and I love that effect. I wanted this to look like water, so I love that texture that water gives to the Distress inks. You can see I'm going to use a cat and dog, and I wanted to just add a little bit more to this ink blended piece. So I'm going to take the bubbles from the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp them with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. You can see sometimes I'm only inking up a few bubbles instead of all 4, just to add some variation to the background. And now I'm going to work on my black frame, which I die cut using 2 of my Stitch Square dies. And I'm going to add acetate behind it because I will be creating a shaker. Off camera, I'm going to add 2 layers of foam tape behind that frame, and then I'm going to add my shaker bits. So I'm choosing some blue shimmery sequins, and I forgot where these are from, but I'm going to try to find them and link them down below. They're all the same size, but they're in different shades of blue, which are really pretty. Some are iridescent and some are metallic. I also sprinkled in some tiny star sequins from a Recollection sequin pack. And then I'll just close my shaker by adding that black frame on top. I'm making sure that's nice and secure before I start shaking it, and I just love those different colors of blue sequins. I'm going to stamp my sentiment directly onto my card base. I chose, I think this says time for a break. I'm going to stamp that towards the bottom right corner, just below where my shaker is going to be adhered. And then I'm also going to glue down my kitty and my puppy. I think these images are so cute. I love the little floaties. And now I'm going to go over them with my Wink of Stella brush to give them some shimmer. And then I'm also going to glue down my shaker panel using some ATG tape. And that will complete my second card. This one was also pretty quick to put together. So cards 3, 4, and 5 are scene cards, so they did take a little bit longer. I'm going to start card 3 off by die cutting this Peekaboo frame by Lawn Fawn. So it cuts out this stitched frame as well as the inside panels. And I will be adhering those back inside the frame, but first I'm going to add some ink to them. For the top left square, I'm going to add Squeezed Lemonade. And then for the top right rectangle, I'm going to add Salty Ocean Distress ink. I'm adding some heavier ink towards the bottom of the rectangle and then just letting that fade out to a lighter blue. For the bottom 2 panels, I will show you those later because at this time I wasn't sure what color I wanted them to be. So for now I'm going to work on the sand. So I have this Hero Arts sand embossing powder and I wanted to use a lot of it. So I'm going to take a scrap piece of Nina panel and I'm going to coat that with my Versamark ink. And then I'm going to pour this Hero Arts sand embossing powder over the entire panel pretty much. And I'm going to cut from this panel for the next 3 cards. Or 2 cards, I don't remember. But I wanted to have a lot to work with. And I do end up using this entire panel. If I were to do it again, I would probably emboss this powder on a craft sheet of cardstock, just because the craft blends in more with that sand powder. So here I'm just going to heat set it. And then I'm going to lay it behind my Peekaboo frame so I know where to cut my little hill. And I'm just freehand cutting this hill with my scissors. You can see I have quite a bit left over that I will use on my next card. So I'm going to attach that behind my white frame using some art glitter glue. And this is where I decide to just add whatever's left on my Salty Ocean brush to these bottom panels to create a light blue sky. So I did not ink up this brush with any extra ink. I just inked it up with whatever was left on that brush. So I'm going to add each rectangle back inside the frame, and then I'm going to take a few of my fussy cut images and lay them out to create a beach scene. I decided to have my dog in the ocean portion, and then I had my cat and a sandcastle and the lemonade on the sand. I'm going to add acetate behind this panel just because I love the look of acetate. You can create a shaker card. I think that would be really cute, especially if you had different shaker bits in each of those windows, but I will just leave it with the acetate. I decided to stamp one of the sentiments to the right of this blue blended panel. I chose Stay Cool. I inked that up with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and that's just because I wanted there to be something on that right side since my dog was the only thing on that portion of the card. I also stamped out Floating By to Say Hi on the inside of that sun fussy cut image. I thought that was really cute, and I'll actually do that on my next card or the card after. All right, so now I'm going to glue everything on the outside or on top of the acetate. So for the sun, I actually glued it onto the ink blended yellow piece. And then for everything else, I'm going to glue it onto the acetate. So I'm going to glue down my dog, my cat, sandcastle, and then the starfish and the lemonade. I am attaching everything with my art glitter glue, and I am off camera going to add some foam tape behind that white stitched frame just to add a little bit more dimension. In order to adhere these ink blended pieces onto my card base, I'm going to add some ATG tape, line them up inside that window, and then hover those panels over my card base, and once they're lined up, I will just press them down to adhere them onto my card base. Most of the time this works out pretty well, but I do them one at a time. That's just a little bit easier for me. The bottom two pieces were a little bit easier to adhere since that sand covered up most of that window. I was able to eyeball that last rectangle. All right, so here is when I add that foam tape behind the frame. I'm just going to pop it up onto my card base, and that will complete card number 3. I really love how this one turned out, and I love that peekaboo frame. For my 4th card, I thought it would be fun to create a slimline card. I've really been enjoying creating long cards lately, and I thought it would be super cute to combine the new Not Too Shabby Picnic Fun stamp set with the Summertime Buddies stamp set. In the Picnic Fun, there's an adorable little panda with a picnic basket, so I thought it would be fun to include that panda to create a little picnic on the beach scene. So I'm first going to create the sand layers, which I freehand cut these slopes, and then I ran them through this Slimline Trinity Stamps die to create that stitching on the sides. And I added some double mounted foam tape to the bottom sand layer, and then for the second sand layer, I only added a single layer of foam tape. For the first layer of waves, I'm going to add that same single layer of foam tape, and then on that darker wave, which will go towards the top of the panel, I'm only going to add ATG tape. So there's some varying dimensions, so that top sand piece will have double dimension, and then the second layer of sand and the first layer of waves will have one layer of dimension, and then this last wave will just have. You can see a little bit early on, I did hold up this panel so you can see what that dimension looked like, and I really enjoy doing this with the Slimline card since you can add so many layers and so many die cut images to a Slimline card. So you're going to see I pretty much use every single fussy cut image that I had in my pool of fussy cut images, and you can see I also added that cute little panda with the picnic basket. I thought that he fits so nicely with the Summertime Buddies stamp set. The illustrator that Jamie has is super talented. I think her style is adorable. So I'm going to attach some of these images with some foam tape and then some of them just with my art glitter glue completely flat. So I'm going to add my little puppy and my kitty to the water, and there was an area next to the cat that was kind of bare. So I'm going to add a palm tree there. Again, using that lawn fawn die. I did die cut a few of these palm trees, so I had them on hand. I'll trim off the trunk so that I can tuck it behind the sandcastle, and then I'll just adhere that with my art glitter glue. I decided to pop up the cat, and I'm going to adhere the puppy flat, and I love how the waves look like it's hitting the floaty. I think this card is so cute. I've been obsessed with Slimline cards lately, and I think out of the 5, this one is my favorite. By the way, I'm gluing everything onto a stitched blue rectangle, and this die is by Trinity Stamps. And I chose a light blue color just because I wanted that color to be my sky. I decided to stamp out a cute little face inside the sun, and this face matches the animal faces really nicely. And I'm also, next to the sun, I'm going to stamp out floating by to say hi with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I will pop up my sun with some foam tape, and then I'm going to flip this blue stitch rectangle, add some ATG tape, and attach it to a slightly larger black stitch rectangle. And I love how the black helps to draw your eye in towards the scene. I a lot of the times like to add black mats to my scene cards. And then I will just attach that black mat onto a card base, and that will complete my 4th card. For my final card, I'm going to do some more ink blending, and I'm going to create a scene that kind of looks like the circle I created for card 1, except this will be a larger ink blended panel. I'm going to use a scrap piece of paper to create my horizon line again, and then I'm going to take whatever's left on my blender brush here from that Salty Ocean Distress ink to create my sky. And then to create the ocean, I'm going to flip that scrap piece of paper over the sky, and then I'm also going to fussy cut a hill from another scrap of paper and add that to the bottom of this panel. So I have a little bit in the center where I can ink blend my ocean. To create the ocean, I am using some Salty Ocean Distress ink, and I'm using a lot of the ink towards the top of the ocean, and then I'm letting it kind of fade out into a light blue where it's going to meet the sand. I'm going to remove those masks, and I'm going to take the piece that I fussy cut the hill from, the top piece, and I'm going to lay that over the ocean to create the sand. And because I cut out a slope, it's going to kind of create a sandy hillside. To create the sand, I am using, I think this is Potter's Clay. This is a Memento Dewdrop ink. I think Antique Linen is a good distress ink to use for sand, but I couldn't find mine. So this color worked out really nicely. You can see once I removed those masks how cool this ink blended piece turned out. I'm going to remove the extra tape I had behind the panel, and then I can start to arrange my scene. I'm going to take my fussy cut images and place them onto this panel. I decided to have my dog swimming in the ocean. And I felt like my sand was too smooth, and I wanted there to be texture like the texture that was on my sandcastle. So I'm taking the same markers I used to color my sandcastle, and I'm just going to add some of those dots into the sand. And then I'll go over the dark dots with my mid-tone, and then I'll go over the mid-tone dots with my lightest marker to help them blend seamlessly into that ink blended sand. And I might have went overboard with the stippling, but I do like how that looks better. And off camera, for some reason my camera turned off, but I did add some crashing water to the sand, if that makes sense. And to create that, I used my snow pen. And when you heat set the snow pen, it becomes puffy, so it kind of looks like crashing water. And I wish I got that on film because I love how the snow pen looks when you heat set it. But that is what I did. You can kind of see that on the panel here. Right now I'm gluing my Hello die cut pieces together. This is a Pink and Main die. I glued 3 white hellos together, and then on top I glued a yellow hello. And then below that I'm going to stamp out Sunshine with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I really felt like that word die filled in that sky area nicely. The sentiments in the stamp set are quite small, so I decided to use this word die. But I did use those smaller sentiments on my other 4 cards, and they're really cute. I just wanted something a little bit different for this card. I'm going to adhere my hello with my art glitter glue, and then I'm going to adhere my fussy cut images with some art glitter glue as well as some foam tape just to add some dimension. So I'm going to glue down my lemonade and pop up the 2 starfish beside it, and then I'll flip this panel over, add some ATG tape, and adhere it to my A2 card base. And I don't believe that I add anything else to this card other than some Wink of Stella over my fussy cut images. And then that will complete my 5th card. Let me know which one was your favorite. I will show you all 5 cards here in a second. Alright, so I'm just going to show you the 5 cards that I made. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't yet already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I post another video. Bye everyone!